I think, you all have got this reputation of getting a lot of developers out of trouble. Is that true?
Milind is the architect,
Yeah.
and I am the engineer and a lawyer. So Milind understands it in a different perspective. He likes to de-entangle everything that is entangled.
Is your job very stressful? Because let's be honest, you all, must be talking to a lot of bureaucrats all the time and must be around powerful people. Does that kind of get stressful?
Yes, sometimes we do feel stressed because of the time constraints and relying on a third-party person who is supposed to understand the way we are talking. But there are always positives and negatives in every field. It depends on how you take up your job.
Don't you think Mumbai is only about FSI?
I think FSI is very critical because that's what brings the financial viability of a project. In fact, today if you approach Mumbai from Bandra sailing on Trans Harbour Link and you see a very good skyline, which was not there 15 years ago.
Yes.
So you must notice that there is a difference.
Yes.
There is a constant approach followed by architects, policymakers to make the city look more beautiful. It's going to take some time.
Mumbai developers are mandated to buy the first 40% of the TDR from the Dharavi Redevelopment scheme. It may be good news for Adani, but what is your take on the development as a whole?
Dharavi DRP is a very, very crucial project for Mumbai. We understand that. But any TDR generating out of it, if it is going to be so viable, they could reduce the prices and come at par with market. And if your prices are less, people will obviously not 40%. They would buy 100% of your TDR earlier.
Town planners decongest Mumbai. What policy changes would you guys recommend?
We need to augment our infrastructure. That's the basic. Water supply is going to be a bigger challenge than anything else in the next 5 years.
Motorcycles are going to be the thing in Mumbai. Even if we have 4 cars, we'll always have a scooty because we know that there's going to be traffic. And the traffic is because of the very motorcycles.
Correct. Do you think that Mumbai will be slum-free?
I think Dhara will be the biggest challenge because 550 acres, one parcel land, and we have similar parcel lands somewhere in suburbs also. If that happens, I think it's going to be quite a reality, and I don't see that it's an impossible task.
Why is the real estate approval process system so slow?
The government is working towards easing. We understand the ease of doing business. But the whole aspect of that argument is never who is wrong. It is always about what is wrong or right.
50% of buildings in Mumbai don't have OC. Right.
OC is not granted because of certain things which the developer has not completed. And the first step is regularization of their OC. The second step is that they wish to redevelop again, they are still stuck up.
Right.
Because without having that issue resolved, they can't even redevelop.
Do you think Mumbai will ever run out of drinking water?
Desalination plants and augmenting water supply should be the next key role the government has to take up. Otherwise, we are going to face this problem sooner or later within the next 5 years in writing.
I'd like to introduce to you the dynamic duo Milind Changani and Yomesh Rao. Just like behind every successful man, there is a strong woman backing him up. Behind every super successful developer, there is a strong licensing architect backing him up. And today, we don't have one, but 2 of Mumbai city's top licensing architects. They are the real reason why developers get their permissions, and they just don't do licensing. They are also into design, policy making, and they have a PropTech app, which is Real-Link and Stallion, which is great for developers. I'd like to introduce to you the dynamic duo, the Jay and Viru, and the yin yang of real estate guys, Milind Changani and Yomesh Rao. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayank, for having us.
Gracing us with your presence and being a part of the real estate show with Mayank.
Thank you.
Oh yes.
And very happy to finally get both of you all together.
We are happy to be with you actually.
Lovely.
Absolutely.
It means a lot. And I just got you something, a little gesture from us, from our side. It's a part of our green initiative.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
This is for you. Thank you so much for taking
Thank
out
you.
time. We know how busy you are.
Thank you, Mayank.
Great to be here. Great studio, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm very, very impressed with the design sense.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
I think
to
all
be
the
here.
credit goes to my wife, Jasleen, who's designed the whole space.
Right.
And she's worked with an architect called Jeffrey Bauer. So you see a lot of glimpse of the use of natural materials in a natural sense.
Very nice. Just so happy to be here. Way better than our studio, guys. We need to take, understand more from them. By the way, when we speak to developers, at least when I speak to developers, I think, you all have got this reputation of getting a lot of developers out of trouble. Is that true?
Well, you see, we've had our 20 years of experience. We've made our share of mistakes and we've learned from them. And I think that's what helps them. That's as simple as that. And we do it honestly and we do it with complete integrity. Simple as that.
Right.
Trying to keep them away from troubles by getting them approvals in the shortest possible time,
Correct.
advising them on the right direction. That's what keeps them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's good that now we have professionals like you. Earlier there used to be a lot of ambiguities, probably 2-3 decades ago. Now with, knowledgeable professionals like y'all, I think even a journey for a beginner developer, a young developer would be significantly easier.
Not just that, even for young professionals, because of the digitization, because of all the policy changes, the whole scenario today is conducive for even young architects to get into licensing.
Right. Speaking of licensing, how did you two get into licensing? Because it's such a niche kind of profile, and you guys are doing so wonderfully well in licensing. How did it start for you? Was it luck by chance, or did you all always wanted to get into this field?
I think for me, it was absolutely accidental. I was working for the Hafiz contractor for a long time. I was into design, and suddenly my mom was an architect, had expired, and I started doing few projects, and it's just like a happy wormhole, I feel.
Right.
For me, it's been serendipitous. The idea is that I was working with a developer and suddenly their projects were getting a lot of issues. I started studying them and of course had interactions. Gradually understood the nuances of regulatory norms and started studying it more and more, and then suddenly we realized someday we are called as experts and we know the regulations very well. And we both together are very, very studious and being diametrically in a different versions of the city.
And you're complementing each other, the black yin yang, yeah.
So regulations wise, between the two of us, we know it all.
It's the blanket.
Most of it,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Is your job very stressful? Because let's be honest, you all, must be talking to a lot of bureaucrats all the time and must be around powerful people. Does that kind of get stressful?
Of course. I think stress is a part of your every cycle of job. But what we need to understand that you have to be more studious. You need to have your proper study in place. You need to be calm so that you can proactively convince those guys as to what we are trying to portray further. So I think the whole idea is to be holistic and be a good listener as well.
Right.
I think my say on this would be we both have a very similar attitude of never giving up.
Yeah.
If
Right.
there is a challenge of a regulation, we both sit across, understand it's not that how it can stop, how it can start again, how we can complete this successfully. That is something which drives both of us.
Yes.
And that keeps us running, and we really strive hard that this attitude is something which we can never give up, and that's why it is there. The stress is absolutely a part of it. Yes, sometimes we do feel stressed because of the time constraints and being relying on a third party person who is supposed to understand the way we are talking. But there are always positives and negatives in every field. It depends on how you take up your job.
Absolutely.
Right. Yomesh, I wanted to ask you something. People obviously respectfully call both of you all the walking, talking DCPR, right? Could you tell our audience what the DCPR is and its value in terms of the city's development?
Development control promotion regulations basically are regulations which would govern the city for the next period of 20 years. The policy makers, of course, with interactions with the general public, decide on a particular policy which is important for the city to run in a very sustainable manner. And this promotion, I believe, is a little silent. P is silent, actually. So somewhere the control is more overwhelming than the promotion.
Right.
Having said that, we try to push our P and we get it done. But it's very critical that any city development is always supposed to be on a game plan. It has to be a role. There has to be a roadmap on how the city is to be developed.
True.
And the idea is that you understand what is the policymakers' thought and how we run along with the policymakers. Regulations are very complex. Mumbai city, one of the most complex regulations. It's very challenging, dynamic projects, and we work towards it. And for a successful completion, that's what is the key part.
Yeah.
So that is what I would say right now. I'm sure Milind would add something.
I think every two projects are totally different sometimes.
Right.
And Mumbai being a brownfield development, redevelopment is the key. And it involves many stakeholders. Right. So a DCPR is something which is like a rule book or a guidebook for all of us to come together and ensure a sustainable development for them.
Right. Now, speaking of projects, as a design and licensing architect, what is your favorite type of project?
I think the most challenging projects become the most favorite type of project.
Ah. See, that's why you are now slated as one of the top guys, because you've been getting out of your comfort zone, and the more challenges you face.
We have a project where we have freehold land, collector land, MADA land, slums, cess buildings, non-cess buildings, reservation, designation, all under one project. And to de-entangle that entanglement
Wow.
is the fun part of it.
Right.
And when you finish it and you feel, oh yes, that was a good one.
Like, it was everything in one.
Everything in one.
Mumbai,
Milind is the architect,
Yeah.
and I am the engineer and a lawyer. So Milind understands it in a different perspective. He likes to de-entangle everything that is entangled. I am somebody who likes my numbers very well. I like to understand the math of it, and I try to decode the math. And we sit across talking numbers and talking plans and finding solutions, the best possible solutions. The idea is that Mumbai real estate is very expensive. The numbers really matter.
True.
So, now coming to numbers and project feasibility and profitability, don't you think Mumbai is only about FSI? And because of that, and because to make a project feasible, financially feasible, don't you think the design essence and the aesthetic appeal is lacking in Mumbai projects? Because I come from like a holiday home segment where architects don't even use the FSI. We see 0.2 FSI used for a bungalow project, and you can talk to an architect 45 minutes on the roof of a structure.
True.
So do you think that is lacking in Mumbai because, of course, of its the nature of the city?
I think FSI is very critical because that's what brings the financial viability of a project. But at the same time, it does affect, as rightly said, the overall aesthetics in the buildings. But we have creative architects, good architects, who are making the best of what is available, which is a balance of his financial feasibility and the good looks.
Right.
And what you have to understand is, the policies need some reformation. And we are working with the government for making iconic building a new policy and how it can transform the city. In fact, today, if you approach Mumbai from Bandra Worli sailing on Trans Harbour Link, and you see a very good skyline, which was not there 15 years ago.
Yes.
So you must notice that there is a difference.
Yes.
There is a constant approach followed by architects, policymakers to make the city look more beautiful. But it's going to take some time. So at a micro level, there is an issue. We can't deny it.
Right.
FSI, and developers always would love to understand what all is free of FSI. The idea is to actually bring down their average cost and to see how they make it a more profitable venture. That's why regulations are used to optimize their FSI to an extent where their investments and the redevelopment, rehabilitation expenses, etc. are curtailed, and they make a decent profit out of the project. I believe it's justified, yes, but you have to make a mix of your design, and I would say optimize everything and make it the best.
So you said regulatory costs, right? Just a quick one. Don't you think Mumbai's premiums are too expensive? Like as per reports, is anywhere between the average is about 5,500 rupees per square foot average.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's 47 times Hyderabad.
Absolutely.
And 25 times Delhi, 50 times Bangalore. So don't you think that's a significant, it just makes life more difficult for developers? And what policy change do you recommend for that?
I believe within Maharashtra itself, yes, you're absolutely right. Because we've got people from Hyderabad, Bangalore, Delhi, and even other states who want to invest in Mumbai and start projects over here. And when we tell them the feasibility premium cost, they are like, what the hell? This kind of premium, 50% of ready reckoner rates is like awesome. Even in Maharashtra, in fact, the DCPR, which has recently come in, so Bombay has already got a big land rate. The land rate prices, as it is, the ready reckoner is very high. Plus, you're paying 50% of that. You go to Pune, you go to Kolhapur, you go to Nagpur, the land rates are anyways less, and they're paying only 15%. So 50% and 15%. Our fungible FSI is at 50% of ready reckoner, and for commercial, it's 60% of ready reckoner. And the same thing in Nagpur, Pune, everywhere else is 10% of ready reckoner of already reduced price. So this is a huge disparity. It's like, okay, you're the one you're making more money. That's what they believe, and that's why they are milking the cow. That's it. But
I mean, you'll be surprised. Under ease of doing business, and the World Bank has a report, right? The most developed countries like Australia, US, or even European countries, the cost of these FSI is probably 1%, or so you can say 1x. And in the same ratio, Mumbai is 5x.
Wow.
So it's not just an issue domestically that we are facing, but even compared to international businesses that are happening under reality business, we are proportionately very high. Proportionately. I mean, you can't compare dollars and Indian rupees, but it's actually a study that it's 1x and we are 5x. Surprisingly, Afghanistan is the worst.
Right. Wow.
I have a story on the same thing. In fact, we are doing the project for Rishiji is no more now, but I remember we started Rishiji's project. Rishiji is a great person. He told me, I bought this land for 2 lakhs. Your premiums are coming to 22 crores. This is my land. So, and Rishiji is somebody with a straight arrow. He tells you bang on your face what it is. So I made his feasibility and I told Rishiji, your premiums are going to be, and his land rate Pali Hill is very high, 2,44,000. So I told him, sir, your additional FSI, TDR purchase, fungible FSI, open space divisions, he's taking his premiums. This is going to be 22 crores. He's like, मैंने 2 लाख रुपए में खरीदा है plot और 22 करोड़ का मेरे को premium भरना है, मेरा cost है. This is how.
Good
But that's the way Redevelopment.
So we need policy changes to bring down the cost. And we have noticed in the past that whenever you bring down the cost of approvals, the cost is transferred to the buyers and it has given a boost where the revenues have increased by 3x, if not less,
Absolutely.
for the government of Maharashtra. So definitely premiums should come down to boost the reality business. I think the coming government who needs to take this very strongly and boost it.
Absolutely. Coming to notifications and regulations, I believe there's a notification that says that Mumbai developers are mandated to buy the first 40% of the TDR from the Dharavi Redevelopment scheme. So what is it may be good news for Adani, but what is your take on the development as a whole? Where do you see Mumbai real estate?
So basically, TDR concept is unique to Mumbai. This is where the TDR concept started in this entire country. We are the first corporation which started the transfer of development rights, where you hand over land and you get TDR, which can be used by the remainder or some other plot owner. It's a market-driven commodity. So it's driven by the market as per demand and supply. So obviously, if there is a lesser demand, the rates will go down. If there's a higher demand and lesser supply, the rates will go higher. This is a very clear-cut mandate. Then came slum regulations. Slum TDR is also there. Now, monopolizing it to someone is I feel, not there. 40% to be taken first with them and then taking from somebody else is something which, if that group or that agency developing, generating TDR out of Dharavi, DRP is a very, very crucial project for Mumbai. We understand that. But any TDR generating out of it, if it is going to be so viable, they could reduce the prices and come at par with market. And if your prices are less, people will obviously not 40%. They would buy 100% of your TDR earlier, if at all it's permissible. You can't say compulsorily buy that, though there is no indexation. There are a lot of other incentives given. I think monopolizing would not be appropriate, but the regulation today in the notice period is such, we have to wait and watch what the final notification would come out with.
Right.
We have heard that, okay, this monopoly thing might go away and it will come back at parity. Anyway, non-indexation itself is a big thing. Apart from non-indexation, making it compulsory to buy that first would be, I would say, no, against the principles of natural justice.
I think something simpler would be like credit note system that they already have for PAP, where they have a credit note system and actually the credit note goes for a couple of % less when they give it to some other developer. So the other developer also benefits and the BMC also benefits. Right. They're not handing over direct cash outs, but they're giving a credit note and which can be reused in the market. And premiums is a constant circulatory thing that we need to do around.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
So that
but
also
that without indexation, isn't that like a bold move?
Dharavi is somewhere in the island city, just where the ready reckoner is, of course, not as high as Bandra, but a little more than maybe Andheri, Malad, and maybe in the eastern suburbs, a little Ghatkopar and ahead. So that aspect I still would be okay, because Dharavi is a huge space of area which the government is as a policy trying to transform for the past so many years. So any incentive given to them is absolutely justified, but depriving others of their right is not appropriate. So with due respect, incentive given to DRP is absolutely fantastic to see that the development happens and things happen in the right direction. But making everybody else suffer because of it, or maybe, please take this only, it would be like, I've opened a shop, you first go to this shop only, and iska nahi hoga to hi aap karoge. That would be like
pretty unfair.
Truly not undemocratic, I must say.
So this question is for both of you all. How can town planners decongest Mumbai? Now, just linking FSI to road, I'm sure is not enough, right? What policy changes would you guys recommend?
So I would firstly say that we need to augment our infrastructure. That's the basic. I mean, augmenting our sewage system and water supply. Water supply is going to be a bigger challenge than anything else in the next 5 years. At the same time, you promote mixed-use development. You need to work out systems. I mean, imagine your entire roads are right now clogged with parking on both the sides. You have two-wheeler parkings and four-wheeler parkings. Parking is going to be another bigger issue. So you need to ensure that these two-wheeler parkings actually go inside your buildings so that you don't further clog the road. So decongestion is not just a larger frame of mind, but it's also smaller things in the policy making. Where today, as I just mentioned, the two-wheeler parking is not compulsory, so nobody provides it. But if you make it compulsory, and today most rehab tenements or most redevelopment projects, each flat does have a two-wheeler car park, and they're all coming on the road. I don't think the people are blind to understand that. Right. So smaller and bigger changes both are required on a micro and macro level to make these changes and to ensure that we have a sustainable development. Today, I believe sustainable development is all about augmenting what we have, because we can't go anywhere else. We have to go vertical. So our infrastructure needs to be boosted.
Absolutely.
It's a very interesting point. The domino effect
Yes.
of not having two-wheeler parkings will actually be on the road. Where will they park?
Absolutely.
People are realizing, there are not one, sometimes two layers. In fact, certain areas like B ward, C ward, where there's already so much density, the road widths are already narrow. Imagine this entire road planning. It's so funny. It's done in the 60s and 71, right? And post that, the road widening has not been enhanced further. It's only right now we're doing 6 meter to 9 meter. That's all. There are no 90 feet made 120, 120 made 200 feet because it's brownfield development. The entire plots go into road setbacks. Right. So what are you going to do? The only solution right now available to you, or at least the clear one available to you, is to ensure your roads are free of cars and two-wheelers. If you have that also, 25% problems gets resolved that.
Right.
The problems of Mumbai is really unique as...
True.
We can talk on and on
The
about
city of
all the
chaos.
problems, but the idea is that we always like to look at solution oriented, and that's
Yes.
how CY Corp is. We always look at how do we resolve it. Yes, we have anyways as a country, India is 2% or maybe 3% of surface area with 20% population. On top of it, Mumbai is the biggest city in Mumbai with a smaller land area and the biggest population. So
Right.
imagine the challenges that we face. Obviously, what you may learn in some other countries is not going to work in India, never in Mumbai. So like rightly said by Milind, you have to identify your localized problems. Off-street parking is definitely a big problem. I think the earlier designs of roads were really nice, and the width of the road is fine. Infrastructure is catching up. That's a good thing. You have more local transportation, public transport. That is absolutely important. That is a policy-based decision. It's not going to be a planning decision.
It's a macro level.
We
need micro level thinking
at the government level, where they improve the public transport system. Right. But as he rightly said, motorcycles are going to be the thing in Mumbai. Even if we have 4 cars, we'll always have a scooty because we know that there's going to be traffic. And the traffic is because of the very motorcycles.
Correct.
So I believe somewhere, and the regulation does not provide for it. That's exactly what we talk.
It has a may provision, not a should.
Yeah. So some committees insist on it, but yes, it's not mandated. You can, and of course, some of the good ones definitely provide for it. But I think a little thought on this process would definitely make things. Of course, the macro thing is trying to be done, but at planning stage as well, we try to do our best. But it's a long way, but we keep working. It's a Kaizen process. So we keep working towards a better one.
Now, speaking of planning, right? When you pass plans and project approvals, how do you identify and merge subsections within Section 33? What goes behind identifying that?
One is that there is a regulatory norm which allows me to combine only a particular regulation with a particular. So half our problems are solved. But having said that, within that we have multiple options. There would be a 3311, a 3320B, a 337B with some 3312B. So a lot of multiple options. Then we actually we specialize in understanding what is the best possible alternative on a particular plot. What would work on a corner plot may not work on the second plot. There is that. What would work on a 1,000 square meter plot may not work on a 500 square meter plot, or what would work on a 5,000 square meter plot may definitely not work on a 1,000 square meter plot. So a lot of permutation combinations which we have to definitely work upon and give the best possible solution to the developer so that he develops a building which is not only faster, cleaner, sustainable, but also beneficial to him and to the existing rehab members. As rightly said by Milind, it is a brownfield development.
Right.
It is never going to be a greenfield one. Very rare vacant plots are available in the city. In fact, the vacant ones are occupied by slums. So there is a 3310 regulation for that. And even if God's grace, if some developers or landowners protect the land against encroachments, then those land have been declared as a reservation. And now we have an AR policy. So it's like this. You have a structure, it's not a reservation. You keep it vacant, you protect it with all your might, it is made a reservation of a garden. And then you develop it with a 30-70 rule, give 70% to government, which is fine. But having said that, luckily this current regulation at least don't restrict your FSI.
True.
The government has been liberal in granting the potential to be used by the owner. This is what really works. Combinations are really very complex. And it takes a lot of mental challenges and to give the best outcome. And that's precisely something which we try to embark as a journey and work together and give the best possible solution. But it's really challenging to see which one suits really good.
Right. Milind bhai, now in terms of section 33(7)(a) and B, now of course, it'll take you probably 2 days to explain it to us in technical terms. But in layman terms, if you were to explain, what this is all about and the actual challenges that you face at the grassroots level, and because of which any policy changes that you would recommend the same in this.
So 33(7) is redevelopment of CES buildings.
Right.
And you get an FSI of 3 or incentive. Again, the challenge comes within CRZ and non-CRZ areas, because the CRZ areas have capped the FSI as on January 2019. And there have been modifications subsequent to that. So those are not applicable there. 7A is about redevelopment of tenanted properties which are not cessed and they are non-cessed, and that actually helps in suburbs and city as well as but the tenanted properties in suburbs are less comparatively.
Right.
And 33(7)B society redevelopment. So in all of this, I think the major issues comes with, first starts with the landowners. How to convince all the landowners to come on board. Second challenge becomes the tenants, to convince them that the right offer has been given to them, the compensation for rent, corpus and maintenance of the building thereafter that's going to come to them, the property tax is going to increase. So all these are the crucial challenges which come in the initial stage of the development. So regulation does promote, and both 7A and 7 have a good understanding that where you bring 2 or more plots, you get more incentive, the tenant get more incentive, the developer get more incentive. In 7B, unfortunately, that is missing because it's society redevelopment. So you have to rely on combination of scheme which Yomesh was just talking about previously. So there are challenges, but I think 7A, 7 are actually going in the right direction to a certain extent. But more than that, I think cluster will actually change the whole gamut of schemes.
Right. Which is my next question to you. That what is your take on cluster redevelopment and what are the actual challenges faced in aggregating plots and, again, the policy changes that you would recommend?
So cluster redevelopment actually is the only scheme which allows, as I was just talking to you, multiple tenure of plots, multiple types of buildings. Of course, they have to be authorized, various type of tenancies, government buildings, reservation designation, all to be developed under one roof. So as rightly said, the challenges starts with the landowning guys to come together. But there is a provision in the rule that if you have 70% of the development rights, the 30% can be acquired through a government process called Empower Committee. Similarly, consent-wise, it is 60%, 51% building-wise or 60% aggregate. So you've been given some liberty. Some building might be less than 51%, but other building you have more than 70%. So aggregate is 60%. So that way you can redevelop the building. But ultimately, I think somewhere greed comes into play. And greed comes at every level. It's human nature. It's a human tendency. But this is one scheme which gives you more benefit than any other scheme per se. And this is what we have to understand and sometimes educate all of them together. That look, a cluster development needs sometimes minimum input of 100, 120 crores at the initial stage or even 200 crores. Somebody who's investing that kind of money needs some security or needs some profitization to ensure for the banks and other aspects. So we all have to come on board, and there is no other scheme which comes close as far as compensation is concerned to the tenants or the members, because it's the highest in this particular scheme. So overall, this is a scheme which is actually getting a good booster because of the modifications of 8 July 2021. And let's see, a lot of clusters are coming up. In fact, it started in 2009. Till till 2021, there were probably 5 or 8
Yeah, it
schemes.
didn't really take off.
And now there are more than 50 schemes which are already approved and they are actually starting construction. That speaks volumes. That speaks volumes.
You're very involved in the cluster redevelopment space as well, pioneering the, I think.
There are a lot of people,
yeah.
but we've been working hard on it.
Yomesh bhai, could you tell me for in layman terms, the difference between 3310 and 3311 and how you combine and sort of switch play around with these two?
Yeah. Basically, 3310 is a slum redevelopment. The idea is that we have the Slums Act of 1963. Anything that has been declared as a slum has to be developed under the regulation 3310. Planning Authority is Slum Rehabilitation Authority. Now, 3311 is something different. It is not a slum. It is a privately owned land. If a developer wishes to make his own project with a greater FSI, because 3311 has a great FSI, it's a higher FSI, plus the Planning Authority is SRA, and there are a lot of incentives in terms of premiums. So your FSI directly is 3 and 4. You get more FSI. Of course, you give a small share of your construction to PTCs, which is Permanent Transit Cam, and you hand it over to BMC, but the rest to the SRA and everything else is yours. So 3311 is a high FSI notification or a regulation. 3310 is an SRA. Now, you have SRA projects which are having a non-SRA land, or people actually bring in a non-SRA land, and clubbing of 331011, because both are the same planning authority, works. So you already have a high FSI with SRA. You need some extra vacant land and get into 4 FSI, which is, apart from cluster, this is the only regulation which gives 4 FSI apart from commercial CBD. So higher FSI is in 331011, plus the deficiencies are at 10%, staircase premiums are at 10%, the scrutiny fee is a fraction of a regular development. So all these benefits are something which SRA gives and nobody else gives.
Right.
So 3310, all slums have to be developed, which are declared as slum, consensus slums, government land slums, private land slums, which are declared under the Slums Act, have to go under 3310. 3311 is our choice, but today the most lucrative part is 3311 because the premiums are the cheapest. And this is the most feasible combination if you are good with the SRA Rehabilitation Authority. The best thing is this, except there are some new rules coming up. We'll have to wait and watch how that works.
Right.
So we are hoping and waiting. Regulatory changes are absolutely fine.
Yomesh bhai, Mumbai is home to many SRA projects, right? As we know, it's obviously the present and the future, and we see a lot of rehab buildings. And let's be honest, the construction quality is not the best of those rehab buildings to probably make projects more feasible. But my question to you is, do you think in the coming 3 decades, it could pose a very interesting urban challenge for the city as a whole, because we might have to redevelop those rehab buildings anyways again, because they might crumble after 3 decades?
Yes, I would agree. When the SRA really started, initial rehab buildings have been a disaster. Of course, their areas were also smaller. Earlier, it started with 225 square feet, then it became 269. Now it is 300 square feet. So obviously, the apartment sizes have also increased. In fact, the people who participated in slum rehabilitation earlier are the biggest losers, because they used to get only 225 square feet houses. And of course, and I think we can also visually see the old rehab buildings and the current rehab buildings. It's a sea change, because the whole dynamics of the market has changed. So all those 225 buildings are definitely going to come up very soon for being rehabilitated, I would say. And that's going to be a challenge, of course, because the sale component is done and there are these rehab buildings which are standing there on. So government will have to come up with a strong policy to actually incentivize in a big way, so that these people are rehabilitated with bigger houses, as well as there is some juice to make for a developer to redevelop, rehouse them, and also make a sale, because it's always been a PPP model.
Right.
This is going to be a challenge which I think the government will very soon have to address. Because currently there is no policy to redevelop the redeveloper.
Correct. I think the time is not far.
True.
Far away.
True.
Do you think that Mumbai will be slum free?
I believe that if we continue at the pace that we are going, probably 20-25 years, we may see that light at the end of the tunnel. And I think Dhara will be the biggest challenge, because it's 550 acres, one parcel land, and we have similar parcel lands somewhere in suburbs also. If that happens, I think it's going to be quite a reality, and I don't see that it's an impossible task.
The issue is, sometimes in a SRA project, you make a rehab building for those slum dwellers, but post possession they would lease those flats out illegally to other slum dwellers and recreate slums for themselves and go back and live in those slums. How do you tackle that?
I think that's something like a nexus which has happened over the past, but proactive measures need to be taken and you need to do it so fast that it doesn't come up. So the whole idea would be is to make the city of Mumbai slum free as fast as possible before they mushroom back,
Right.
or before they collaborate back, because the land space is also reduced. I mean, where they're developing, the land is gone, right? So whatever is left is where they can build it.
Right.
Also, the regulatory challenge, I think, Milind, is that the regulation actually has a restriction that you can't sell your apartment for 10 years. Of course,
Right.
unfortunately, that has been now reduced to 5 years. I don't
Yes.
for whatever motive, let's keep that aside. 10 years, nothing could be sold. Obviously, it should have meant that nothing should be leased also.
Right.
So the registrar or somebody should have monitored that once they are rehabilitated, they are there in the same premises. Unfortunately, that is not there.
So,
So these people sell it out, rent it out,
True.
and then
I think our problem also compounded because we're providing only free housing. I mean, if you see Singapore as a model,
Yes.
and the pictures of 70s in Singapore and the pictures of Mumbai, Dharavi, they will look uncannily same. So they leased out these lands at a X price, right, at a very subsidy cost, and we've been put in a habit of free housing. Fine, but as rightly pointed out by Yomesh, that leasing of them should be avoided. In fact, if government can provide this free housing also on a lease basis,
Right.
that will prevent multiple transfers happening in these cases, and they will be in those houses at a much subsidy cost. And yes, what is more required is reforms on a policy basis where monitoring and maintenance of these buildings is the crucial challenge. I mean, lifts we install, we may create 20 stories and now we're creating 40-story buildings as for rehab, right? To maintain those buildings, the lifts and other aspects is a cost. And that cost has to be borne by something, and there needs to be a monitoring agency to ensure that it's being maintained. If it's not being maintained, we are headed for a vertical slum development.
That'll be nasty.
That'll be nasty.
If that happens. What is your take on transit-oriented development and TOD in general? Aren't areas near transport corridors anyway so congested generally? So what's the planning? How do we,
In fact, we just had a notification very recently on TOD. It's something which is not understood by many.
Right.
Because the regulation notice has come up in such a manner that we don't understand whether it is applicable to only a particular line or for everybody, and of course other aspects. Keeping that aside, TOD is already active in Pune and other areas also. So the idea is to give extra incentives to the areas closer to the metro stations. Obviously, the thing is that the lifeline of Mumbai has always been the railway lines, which is the Western Central and Harbour line. Metro are not coming on that. It's coming either on the highway or on the linking road or the SV road side in some areas. So the government is very right in having a TOD plan, which is nice because these metro stations will also be a transit mode for the future of the city. And giving any incentive and trying, the whole idea of TOD is to decongest the traffic, decongest everything, and have people around the places just like other countries. Of course, the population is less, our population challenge is still there, yet having offices very close to the metro station. People will not step out and use an auto or a train or another bus or a taxi. You just walk down to your office. This is TOD. So the idea is that people coming out of the metro station just walk down to their office or walk down to their houses. So this is the transit-oriented development where you have a connectivity between those metro stations, maybe below ground, maybe above ground. The regulation notice says below ground with a vestibule. We are hoping that the new notification which finally come up with a different light. But you walk down through the metro station without using any transport and you just go into your house within 500 meters. That will decongest the areas around it, and there will be incentives to these buildings which are coming around, which will further give the developers the liberty to spend a little more and get these connectivities to the stations, especially the commercial ones and even the residential ones. So this is a very fantastic scheme in theory. We have to see it in practice how it works.
Yes.
As regards the feasibility only, the main part. But I believe TOD is a much needed regulation, and it is very much something which done at a right time, which is right now when the metro is being developed, is going to be very, very fruitful. I believe the notification should come very fast. The reason being already developments are going on around the metro and the metro is already coming in place. It should not be too late that the building is already developed and the construction foundation has come up, and then even if he wishes to, he can't do a TOD because you can't connect it later.
Correct.
So I think it's a fantastic regulation and which is very much needed in the city.
Right. which city, according to you, in India has the fastest approval processes, and which city, apart from Mumbai, would you want to practice licensing in?
I think Hyderabad and Bangalore both have a much faster approval system. Hyderabad is 21 days.
Wow.
And it's quite surprising that it's much more clearer. But you should understand that it's greenfield development, most of it. And we are brownfield development. So we have our own set of challenges.
Right.
But comparing it to other places also, for example, Singapore is also a fastest redevelopment process or a permit system because of the predictability in the rules. We do not have predictability in the rules. Also imagine, I mean, there are cities like Phoenix in US, right, where they have self-certification process. And the self-certification process says that minimum 25,000 square feet is what they will certify, nothing below. And any number of floors. Well, that's the kind of faith they have in their consultants.
Right.
अपने यहाँ पे क्या है? Self-certification process है, पर तुम खाली 150 स्क्वायर मीटर के घर को सर्टिफाई कर सकते हो, 1500 फुट
1500
एंड ग्राउंड एंड वन. मतलब हमारे पे उतना ही भरोसा है कि तुम खाली इतना ही कर सकते हो. So imagine two different approaches on self-certification. One says minimum 25,000. One says not more than 1,500.
Do you get into arguments with like the BMC engineers, or sometimes when you're passing, when you have a recommendation or something like that? How does that?
I think that's a constant process, and you have to. And right. I don't think they see it as a confrontation. They see it as an academic discussion a lot more times, and it's needed. And yes, you may have arguments, you may have discussions which may feel back and forth, it may get heated. End of the day, you have to understand the goal that we need to achieve. If all of us understand the goal that needs to be achieved, I think success comes along the way.
Right. Why is also, speaking of fast approvals, like why is the real estate approval process system so slow? Is it the corruption, or do you think so many windows and processes are actually needed?
I think multiple factors all coming together. The government is working towards easing. We understand the ease of doing business. Rules have been simplified. Yet I feel, as the previous one Milind said, that there is always an understanding and interpretation of a regulation, which we obviously try to speak to the officers. If not, go to the higher officer and trash it out. But the whole aspect of that argument is never who is wrong. It is always about what is wrong or right. We have to decide that. Who is wrong is immaterial. Yeah. It's never personal. Having said that, we take our work pretty personally because we are very result oriented. But the whole aspect of this regulation network is that ideally the 1967 regulation was 38 pages. The 91 regulation was maybe 100 something odd pages. And the 2034 regulation, which is in 2018, is a 500 page one.
Right.
So I feel simplification of rule would have made it 10 pages. In fact, there was a draft DP within which we all know.
मैं तो थोड़ा contravening बोलता हूँ. I have a slightly different opinion. I think our challenge also comes because of the multiple agencies that we've brought in. Yes. I mean, MCZMA, then you have high-rise committee, then you have environmental committee. If I had to come up with a new set of rules and regulations, I would want predictability. And say, as I said earlier also, that 9 out of 10 concessions or 99 out of 100 concessions are standardized. All of them need to become rules. And even if the DCPR is, I would say, 1,000 pages, but if it incorporates all of these departmental requirements, and I don't need to go anywhere, you can easily have an AI software scrutinizing a proposal and saying blah 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 blah.
Like a one-stop shop for
one-stop shop, yes. And that's what is needed. I mean, you need an approach where you cut down the layering, bring predictability, and I think more and more investment will come in the city.
Right. Now, 50% of buildings in Mumbai don't have OC. All right. And obviously on humanitarian grounds, the government can't evict all these people living in those buildings. Now what that does is it does two things, right? One, people tend to lose faith in that OC, right? And second question is, do you think that the government should come up with a amnesty scheme again and just regularize all those buildings and grant them OC?
Policy-wise, in fact, we are already through various organizations wanting an amnesty scheme. There has been a last amnesty scheme was in 2004. Now, every amnesty scheme has its own problems because earlier we had the ULC flats to be handed over. Milind, we discussed about the Mahada flats to be handed over, which is not done. Right. OC is not granted because of certain things which the developer has not completed. Occupying premises, there are various issues. Maybe the developer is no longer there. The architect is no longer there. The most important fact which we feel is that if the fire compliance is there and if the people living in the building are safe to live in that premises, and they have had a valid documentation and they've been living in the premises with a legitimate and they have been victimized in some manner, the amnesty has to be there in place without levying too much of a penalty, which is not there, not because of their fault at all. It's like somebody sold and they bought it and they have a registered agreement, and then today you tell them pay premium of 1 crore rupees for the flat. It's not going to work.
It's not
The
even
amnesty will
amnesty.
not
Yeah,
work.
It's not even amnesty.
Correct.
In
like
fact, it's
a penalty.
profiteering. It's
Right.
profiteering.
Right.
It's profiteering
So,
from their
I mean-
from their burdens and the kind of stress they already have
Right.
because of the pop of somebody else.
Right.
And somewhere we need to understand that these are the guys who bought with legal money. They're paying property taxes. We are giving free housing to slums, but we don't have a scheme for them. So, as he was rightly saying, say sometimes MADA surplus area, a developer is supposed to give it. There are FIR being placed by MADA on various developers where they did not hand over these MADA surplus flats.
Right.
What is the fault of the people staying out there? You should deal it, I would say, by delinking this process, delinking the issues created by the developer as an obligation to the government, and make certain provisions for the people who are staying there and regularize them at a very, very reasonable cost by just recovering scrutiny fee, I would say. And yes, if they have enclosed flower beds, they have enclosed various other factors, and even the tenants knew that what they were doing. Let us not understand that everything is the fault of developers and then government and stuff like that. Even people who bought flats extended their flats. Everybody had greed, right? You bought it, you did certain act with greed, you have to pay for it. So you pay for it, but make the process so transparent and easy. Maybe self-certification, and you just recover the money, and the city benefits by recovering the money. They benefit so that they have a clean, clear title and they can sleep peacefully.
Right.
So somewhere, I think more liberalization is needed out here.
And this is the first step is regularization of their OC. The second step is that they wish to redevelop again, they are still stuck up.
Right.
Because without having that issue resolved, they can't even redevelop.
They can't even
Correct.
That's going to be a bad thing.
Challenge. Do you think in India the CRZ laws are very strict? Like for example, when you go to Europe and Italy, people have literally built homes on the beach, right? So India has such a beautiful coast. Do you think the CRZ laws were necessary, or are they just too strict?
I can talk about the regulations. The regulation, unfortunately, the CRZ regulation somehow comes just before any good change happens. I don't know why.
Right.
So the first CRZ regulation came on the 19th of February 1991, and the DCR 1991 came on 25th March. And the 19th February said rule are frozen on 19th February, which means TDR came in 25th March, no TDR, no additional FSI in CRZ, unfortunate, except hotel and schools. So the second one came on the 6th of January 2012. And in that case, CRZ, fungible is not allowed. And that's another problem. So the rule of the CRZ rule came just before the DCPR change.
Right.
So 6 January 2011, 6 January 2012, DCPR changed. Unfortunately, CRZ, no fungible, period. Then the new rule now, subsequently, DCPR came on this time. Actually, the CRZ came after the DCPR. We should give that credit somehow. This time it got late. So DCPR came on 12th of November 2018. CRZ came on 18th of January 2019. We are very bajya. Unfortunate part, the biggest redevelopment happened in 33/7/9, the most lucrative one. The whole table changed on the 21st July 2021. 2021. So 21st or whatever, July 2021. So the goodies came in 2021, but the 18th January notification says, sir, you are frozen on this day. So the CRZ has updated itself, but when the rules update, they don't update themselves. So the rules on CRZ gets frozen on the day the notification comes. So any good thing comes in future which the government realizes is necessary for the city. Unfortunate part, the CRZ change doesn't happen so easily. So this CRZ part definitely is something which should have been a blanket thing at state subject. I mean, it's a center thing, subject, but please allow development as is where is, as everybody else is developing. I think Milind would have a larger picture as a planning perspective, is that CRZ, the purpose of CRZ is what? I think Milind, you could talk on that.
As rightly said, I mean, every time the modification comes after, so the goodies are coming.
Right.
So it's crazy. And CRZ, I think, was to protect the shores, right? To protect the marine biology on a principal basis, to protect the mangroves that are surrounding the city. All said and done, when you already have a planned development in place and you're going vertically up, the infrastructure is the responsibility of the state government, and it has no bearings on the ecology of the marine development that way. Yes, one of the biggest issues we have is treatment of sewage, but that's again a solvable problem which the state government can easily implement on how the sewage treatment and how it is disposed of into the seas. Having said all of that, I think the CRZ rules needs a complete bifurcation on what is sensitive, ecological sensitive and other aspects, and where there are no clear boundaries defined. There they need to keep a buffering. In a city like Mumbai, where all the plots are bounded, there's coastal road already come up.
Right.
It is only notional that you're not allowing the vertical development. And the government put it up to the National Coastal Zonal Management, and they came up with a query that do you have the enough infrastructure? I mean, when you're asking a question like that, we must understand that if it was not there, why would they come up with a policy? The FSI came because there is an infrastructure in place. Yes, notionally people feel that a city like Mumbai cannot sustain, we will fail, we will do that, ये वो, सबका drainage हो रहा है,
Right.
सबको आज की तारीख में water supply मिल रहा है,
Right.
सबको electricity मिल रही है. जब ये सब मिल रहा है, तो it is growing, no, at the pace that we are developing. Yes, it needs to keep constantly growing. That needs to be ensured by the policymakers. But that doesn't mean that you stop development. And CRZ, I think, needs a complete revamp to distinguish where it needs to act and where it needs to release it.
Right. Because very well said, because we have such a beautiful coast, and I think if we can develop those regions with in a sustainable fashion, I think it'll be an absolute
Sustainability is the key. But it cannot be blinded by saying, this is a buffer zone and you can't redevelop. I mean, you are already developed, boss.
Exactly, yeah.
Now nothing more you can do to spoil. I mean, it's done, finished.
Right. Also, when you have shacks, when you're allowing collapsible structures in shacks, like for example in Goa, people are anyways coming there in, tourism, right? In fact, in thousands and in lakhs. And anyways ruining the beach and the sea, throwing plastic.
So, in fact, there's regulations to reform how to control that, not stop it.
Right.
How to control it and how to implement better systems needs to be in place.
Right. Do you think Mumbai will ever run out of drinking water? I mean, we've seen the problem right now in South Africa, clean drinking water. It'll be ironic for a city like Mumbai because you're surrounded by water. Or do you think?
हम लोग सब कुछ सोचते हैं भगवान भरोसे. रे बारिश आ जाएगी, पानी भर जाएगा, हमको मिल जाएगा. So one bad rain will create chaos at times. And considering the kind of development we are doing in the city, we've been doing infrastructure development. The government is doing a lot on infrastructure development. The government is doing a lot of other redevelopment and development aspects. Electrical energy, we have a surplus. But water, augmentation, we need probably more desalination plants. Bombay has the biggest advantage of having water on three sides. Desalination plants and augmenting water supply should be the next key role the government has to take up. Otherwise, we are going to face this problem sooner or later within the next 5 years in writing.
That's very,
It's
very,
a matter of time, yes.
It's a matter of time. One bad rains and we'll be in chaos.
Wow.
Like
Now,
Bangalore is facing this summer.
Right, right. Now, since Bombay is obviously surrounded by three sides of water, and we can't grow radially like how Delhi and other cities can, how does Mumbai, develop further without getting more congested?
We have no other way but to go vertical. And to go vertical, we need to augment our infrastructure. Infrastructure not just from public transportation, but also infrastructure below the ground. We need to improve mixed-use development. We need to work on TOD, implement TOD, because you can't stop development, right? I mean, a particular plot is either going to develop in X kind of scheme or TOD. It's not both.
Right.
It's either or. And development is happening. Might as well do it in a way where the city integrates so well that it becomes self-sustaining, and it has to go vertical. At the same time, you need connectivity, like you have the Trans-Harbour Link and other connectivities, where more housing can be created which supports the system. Otherwise, we don't want any more slums coming in.
Right. I mean, it's been really nice of you all to give us your time from your hectic, schedule. Just, before we part off, I want to ask you one last question, and this is for both of you all. What word of advice will you give a young developer when selecting a particular project or a plot?
I think with the ease of doing business and actually digitization of everything, I believe a lot of first-time developers we encounter in our schemes as well. People who are investors are actually getting confident to become a developer. People who are landowners are getting confident to become a developer. Obviously, if somebody who intends to start development need not worry because things are online, things are digitized. Yes, you need to first understand. Earlier, the days were of maximization. Take maximum FSI and you'll make money. This was a thought, and I think this thought is not entirely wrong, but I think it is substantially wrong. Today, the times is that there's a lot of FSI in many schemes. Just don't go for maximization. Try to optimize your scheme because the time factor is also necessary, that you complete the scheme in a particular time. Feasibility of any project is a must. Any developer who wants to develop, I feel should have a very detailed study of the plot, details from areas to feasibility to premiums, understand what he is getting into and the sale rates and the interest costs. If everything is conducive, I think development is absolutely now become very, very easy for even a layperson, an investor, a landowner to develop. That's the good part. This change has happened in the past few years. Development is not the domain of only the hardcore traditional developers. Anybody and everybody can be a developer with the right frame of mind and the right attitude, with the right kind of money, of course.
Right.
Because
Right kind of money.
construction cannot stop, and
Correct.
it is pretty much cash intensive.
Intensive.
Very, yeah.
Yes, that's the right.
I would say, I think most of the points covered by Yomesh, but at the same time, having a pre-study of your plot, there are a lot of covenants that come into play. You have defense, you have heritage, you have various other aspects, and a lot of assumptions are made that, I will get the height, whether it's heritage or defense, and you buy the plot and you intend to develop and you say, I'll go to the commissioner for concessions and then obtain the NOCs later. This is going to be a challenge for a lot of developers where they assume that they can develop it in a certain manner without considering these critical aspects. The second aspect comes, I think, in the organizational part, where if the proper organization is missing, somewhere down the line, the cost will increase. Thirdly, use of technology, use of AI, use of ERPs or whatever needs in the construction schedule so that the construction happens on time. If the project is delayed,
Right.
and the financial are not in place, and if the project is delayed for multiple set of reasons, it can create chaos and havoc. So what Yomesh is trying to say is that the permissions overall are in place, ease of doing business are in place. But as young developers, study your plot, study your title, be organized, use technology, and make sure you are at the top of things. Don't assume that it's going to happen just because you have the right consultants in place. Be at ground zero and you will be successful.
Right. I mean, that's awesome, guys. Thank you so much again for giving us your Saturday.
Thank you, man.
Spending time with us, and I'm sure the audience, and it was a great learning curve.
Thank you, audience.
For all of us, right? Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.